This is a Fox News alert. New Zealand's Prime Minister calling it one of the darkest days in the country's history after a gunman opens fire inside two mosques, killing at least 49 people. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. Friday morning, I'm Sandra Smith.
Friday morning, one of those tough mornings, too. Sandra, good morning to you. I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning at home. One man's been arrested, charged with murder. Two other armed suspects being held in custody at this hour. The gunman, apparently dressed in military gear, live streamed the attack online, along with a manifesto that he put online. A witness now describing the carnage that he saw in Christchurch.
I saw that some people were running out through my room where I was in, and also I saw some people had blood on their body, and some people were limping. At that moment, I realized that it was really serious.
Complete coverage beginning in this hour. Former New York State Homeland Security Advisor Mike Balboni is here on the investigation. But we begin with the reporting on Kitty Logan, live from London with the latest from there. Kitty?
Hi, Bill. Well, it's a shockingly high death toll from these shootings. 49 people confirmed dead by New Zealand police. And police believe that this attack was very well planned in advance. And it's interesting to note that much of it was planned and publicised online as well. Now, the actual shooting started at about 1:45 local time in one mosque first and then the other. But this is a time, of course, when mosques are always very busy on a Friday with people attending prayers. And some were said to be kneeling in prayer when the attack happened. Witnesses say the shooting went on for at least 5 or 6 minutes. It was a sustained attack. Police also found 2 bombs attached to a car, which did not go off. They were later defused. Now, police were able to detain 4 suspects fairly soon after the attack itself. One man is of particular interest. He's said to be in his late 20s, an Australian man. He has already been charged formally with murder. 2 other suspects are still in custody. Now, authorities haven't named this key suspect, but the Australian man being linked to the attack has also promoted an anti-immigration manifesto online, as well as a graphic video of this attack, which was also posted. Of course, Facebook did immediately try to remove that, but it has been circulating on social media ever since. And at least 20 people were injured, as well as those 49 killed. They were rushed to hospitals for emergency treatment. And police obviously cordoning off that area. The city now, of course, in darkness. It is nighttime in New Zealand, but many people staying indoors as that city remains on lockdown. The shootings, of course, have met with international condemnation. New Zealand remains on high alert and in shock. This is a country which is not used to this level of violence, Bill. The last mass shooting was about 1990, about 40 years ago. And this is a country which has largely welcomed refugees and certainly is used to a more quiet and peaceful life.
No doubt about that, especially in Christchurch, too. It's called the Garden City for a reason. Thank you, Kitty Logan, reporting there in London on that today.
For more on all this, let's bring in now Mike Balboni, former New York State Homeland Security Advisor. Mike, appreciate your time this morning as we continue to learn more of the horrifying details about what played out in New Zealand. On the very latest involving the 4 suspects, 3 in custody, we're trying to learn more, but what we know so far.
So what we have here is a planned attack where essentially someone was going to be using not only weapons but also explosives. And it looks like it was at least coordinated, that this was not the work of one individual. I've actually been to Christchurch, and it's a quiet, sleepy community. It's a beautiful community. And as your reporter said beforehand, they're not used to this level of violence. And one of the things that struck me is there's a lot of video out there. One of the things that you see is this guy walked into this synagogue in the area where there are other people around carrying these weapons that you cannot conceal an AR-15. It's too big a weapon. And yet nobody said anything, apparently, to get to the police so that they could get to the guy before he was finished with his shooting there. And he got into his car and then went to another mosque. 20% of active shooters have been studied. They move. They go to other places. That's really what makes the response, the police response, so difficult. But this is the most chilling feature of this horrible attack, besides being at a place of religious worship on a holy day in the afternoon services, is that this was designed for social media. This guy put a camera on his head, went into a mosque, and committed this horrible activity so he could put this on social media.
Streamed it online, wrote what some are calling some sort of manifesto. I think the chilling thing, Mike, is that he wanted to live. Based on the reporting we're getting out of New Zealand, that he wants to stand trial, and there's only one reason for that. He wants to make sure his views get expressed publicly. How sick is that?
Well, Bill, you're absolutely right. Normally, these types of shootings that we've seen in the United States, the shooter takes their life within 5 to 10 minutes of the activity. So this individual is sick. He posted these rantings online beforehand. And also, to take this military action, that's really what this is. You go and you get this military-style weapon, and you go into a mosque where people are praying, unarmed, and just to slaughter them. It becomes such a question of insanity that someone would want to do this. But, the question has also been circulating whether or not this was an attack that was based upon religion or based upon immigration. The New Zealand community has really been kind of struggling a little bit over the time in terms of how to deal with the immigrants. There was a law passed in 2017 that restricted the ability of foreigners to buy land within New Zealand because the housing prices were being inflated, and citizens of New Zealand were feeling like they were being forced out. That could have played into, so we don't know if necessarily the motivation was against immigrants or against Muslims specifically.
And as we learn more details, Mike, we learned just about how premeditated this attack really was.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of planning, as I said, because
no doubt.
He chose his mosque at a prayer time on a Friday afternoon. He had the weapons, he had the ammunition necessary to carry this out. And then he went to another mosque right around, literally, Christchurch is not that big. It's a pretty quick trip from one mosque to the other. And then he developed the explosives and put them in the car, and then they didn't explode, but then they were rendered safe by law enforcement officials later on. That had the elements of a Mumbai, India-style attack, where they utilized both weapons and explosives. So obviously, this is something that they thought a lot about. And then the other thing that also we sit in this country, with the standard that Americans have really kind of adopted, as all over the world, is we want to prevent these things from happening. So the haunting questions is, if this material was on social media, could law enforcement have seen that and then gone to the individuals and said, wait a minute, we want to talk to you about this. Let's see what you're doing, and perhaps have stopped the bloodshed? That's going to be a chilling question for everybody involved.
Michael,
in this
also just want to add this. The mosques are 3 miles apart, and clearly he had a plan. But he originates from Australia, and apparently he said that he moved to New Zealand to show that even the most remote parts of the world were not free of mass immigration. If he goes to trial, he will get an opportunity to voice more of this hatred. Michael, we've got to run, but thank you so much for coming in today and reacting to that breaking news. Tough stuff from overseas.
Mike Balboni.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
It doesn't matter. I'll probably have to veto, and it's not going to be overturned, and we're going to have our whole thing. It's been, the legal scholars all say it's totally constitutional. It's very important. It's really a border security vote.
President Trump vowing to veto the Senate resolution rejecting his border emergency declaration. While it appears lawmakers will not have the votes to overturn the veto declaration and will likely face a court challenge, see where that goes. But how about this crew? Juan Williams, Fox News political analyst, co-host of The Five, wearing an Irish green tie. Ed Henry, chief national correspondent, looking great in the middle. And Shelby Holliday from the Wall Street Journal on a Friday morning. Welcome back.
Thanks.
And she's looking the best.
Absolutely.
She's about to have her wonderful baby, so we're glad to have her here.
Thank you.
Stay healthy, okay, Shelby?
I will. Thank you.
I have one word for you. Veto.
I saw that tweet.
Right? That's all it took. And the president's going to do this. We'll see whether or not it's on camera today.
Look, we can go back and forth on this, but I think the very bottom line is what's happening now is not going to change a darn thing. So they had this disapproval. Some Republicans embarrassed the president a little bit. They don't have enough votes to override it. So the president tweets veto. He's going to block this disapproval. So we're back to square one. It's going to go to the courts. No. Why don't we get leaders in both parties to finally sit down? We've had a government shutdown. We've had tweets. We've had fights. Do something about the border. Do something about comprehensive reform.
They all agree it's a problem, right?
So do something.
Juan?
Yeah, I think everybody wants to deal with the humanitarian crisis issues at the border. But clearly what we have is a failure to pass comprehensive immigration reform, one. And two, the president has made this about the political promise of the wall. Mexico paying for it now, Americans paying for it, shutdown that we referenced a moment ago. And I think that it is a bigger deal than Ed does, because when I look at the board, I know that Republicans do not depart from Donald Trump easily. And when you get a dozen to do so, and it's across the spectrum, it's not just people who would be identified as liberal Republicans, if there's such a creature, or moderates, Murkowski, Collins, and the like, but you get people like Rubio, you get Rand Paul, you get people across the country saying, hey, Mr. President, this is not in keeping with Republican ideology, and you're opening the door to Democrats using these emergency measures against us in the future.
What does the GOP split that we saw here mean for the president, mean for 2020, Shelby?
Well, the president's people have hinted that these Republicans could actually face a lot of blowback and that the president won't forget who voted against him on this issue. But I think to Juan's point, you have to remember these people are lawmakers. As Susan Collins said, it is my job to uphold the Constitution. That's why she voted against it. She believes the president is overstepping his boundaries here. Senator Lamar Alexander said never before has a president asked for a certain amount of money. The Congress has refused to provide it, and then the president spends it anyway. So I think in some ways it's not necessarily a rebuke to the president for every lawmaker. It's just them viewing their job as upholding the Constitution.
I think Lindsey Graham sees it the same way. Here's what he said yesterday after that was Senator from South Carolina.
President Trump will prevail. His veto will be sustained. Maybe we can change the statute in the future to help alleviate some of the concerns. But I just want my colleagues to know I appreciate and respect your concerns, but I don't share them. To me, this statute allows the president to use military construction in a national emergency, and I think we have one.
So let's see where this goes here. In the meantime, I've got another one word for you. Beto.
Wow. One word before.
Yeah, look at that.
It was veto, and now it's Beto. Well, yeah, it's Friday. Wall Street Journal, here's the headline. Who is Beto O'Rourke? He's the fresh, elusive outsider like Carter, Clinton, and Obama.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's what I think we see Democrats. They're swooning. Man, this is the second coming. First it was Obama. Now it's Beto O'Rourke.
All praise.
And then I had the Texas Democratic Party chair on last night when I was filling in for Martha. Can you name one accomplishment? It went on for a bit. He couldn't name one. Yeah. So you got to come up with something. I get it. You know, he was a backbencher in the House, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. It's hard to get stuff done. We were just talking about how they can't get a darn thing done on immigration, and it's a disgrace. But you know what? If you want to be commander-in-chief, you need to bring something to the table. So he's got them swooning. He's got them excited. There'll be online money. But I'm not yet seeing a rationale, a case, especially since 4 months ago, I think it was, Beto O'Rourke said, no way, I'm not running. What changed?
He did. Shelby Holliday is here from the Wall Street Journal, and you dig into that piece in the Wall Street Journal. You just read the headline. Mr. O'Rourke is the kind of candidate Democrats have so often elevated. The great unknown promising hope and a better politics. Democrats love to fall in love with their nominee. Jimmy Carter in 1976, Bill Clinton in 1992, Barack Obama in 2008. Mr. O'Rourke is offering a similar amorphous idealism, but can he win that message amid a meaner political culture in a field of hard-boiled socialists?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think that there was so much excitement yesterday. He's on tables. He's talking to voters in Iowa. He's going to a place where voters voted for Obama and turned to Trump. So it was an interesting move for him. But I would also point the viewers' attention to another Wall Street Journal piece by my colleague Reed Epstein. Beto O'Rourke, as he points out today, has a very squishy ideology. He once opposed the Affordable Care Act, and he supported raising the Social Security eligibility age. He really pitched himself to Republicans back in the day. Now he's championing progressive ideals. So he hasn't really, and he's doing this intentionally, he hasn't really laid down markers where he stands on certain issues.
He had to think that this was in the crosshairs as soon as he went public. The president said, guy talks with his hands. What was the comment yesterday?
Yeah.
Uses his hands
I don't know what's going on there.
Talking about the table, Shelby. Here is one moment from Iowa yesterday. Here we go. Beto O'Rourke.
We have a democracy that is foundering under attacks that we have never seen before, both from without, foreign governments who seek to undermine our democratic process, and from within, a hyper-partisanship and a commander-in-chief who does not believe in the ability for every single one of us to contribute to our full potential, who doesn't believe in the institutions that he has sworn to protect and serve and to defend.
So I think he had 5 stops in total yesterday. So he had a packed day in Iowa. Juan, is it fair at this moment. I remember you the night that Barack Obama won the Iowa caucus.
Oh, yeah.
And already they're casting him as the second coming, shall we say, of Barack Obama. How does Beto O'Rourke fare in a field that's progressively left in this primary season?
Well, I think that when I think of the leader of the pack right now in Iowa, I think of Joe Biden, and clearly he's more of a centrist than the left-leaning energy of the base. O'Rourke is interesting to me, and I'm very curious to see how he does with the fundraising. Bernie Sanders on the far left, the socialist left, literally set records in terms of fundraising when he announced. I don't know how Beto will do, but Beto did extremely well on the money side during his Senate race against Ted Cruz. He set records there. Will he be able to replicate it? But why is he able to? Because I think, much as the Wall Street Journal said, these are mean political times. Things are so heavily polarized, hard to talk to each other. Beto O'Rourke strikes an optimistic tone in the Obama tradition of hope and change. And by the way, guess what? You know, when the donors, the big donors on the Democratic side, were screening people, O'Rourke didn't go.
But
O'Rourke didn't show up.
Okay, quickly.
I would just add, though, yes, he preaches this message of unity, but his message is also very dark at times, and I'm curious to see how Democratic...
Dark in the sense of...
Well, just he's talking about extinction and climate change. We won't be able to feed ourselves or clothe
12 years
ourselves.
left.
I'm curious to see how Democrats take to that message.
Yeah,
it is a bit dark.
And look, the other thing is, in that clip we played, he's saying we've got a president who doesn't want everyone to participate. Have you checked the unemployment numbers for Hispanics and African Americans, Juan? They're pretty darn good right now. So how can he make the case that the president's not including people in this?
To be continued. Thanks to all of you.
And we'll see you at 2, right?
2 p.m.
And by the way, Shelby, best to you.
Thank you.
I have 2 words for you.
Oh, 2 words.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
It's been
good
fun
luck,
being
Shelby.
on the A team.
I know. Thanks, Ed. Thank you, Juan.
A wonderful thing. Let us know the news when you have it.
Cool.
In a moment, more on the showdown looming between the president and Senate Republicans over his border emergency declaration. 12 GOP senators siding with Democrats. So where does this fight go now? We'll ask our headliner, Senator John Barrasso, a member of GOP leadership. Plus this.
Fox's alert from overnight now. Breaking news from the Middle East. Israel launching dozens of airstrikes on Gaza in response to rocket attacks targeting Tel Aviv. How far will this go? Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, is live in studio coming up.
The Israelis have the right to defend themselves. I'm confident that they will be able to do that. I regret that the folks in the Gaza Strip, probably Hamas, although I suppose we shouldn't speculate, fire these rockets and put Israelis at risk. And this only presents increased risk of escalation, something that we hope doesn't happen, but you should know we will support the Israelis' right to defend themselves.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo there saying America has Israel back. This after our closest Middle East ally launched airstrikes into Gaza in retaliation for rocket fire aimed at Tel Aviv. Joining us now is Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon. Ambassador, thanks for being here this morning. So obviously a show of support from the United States for Israel. Where does this go?
We are grateful for that show of support. We responded. We attacked last night 100 targets of Hamas in Gaza after they sent 2 missiles to Tel Aviv, to the biggest city in Israel since 2014. That's the first time that Hamas is sending rockets into Tel Aviv. We have a very clear message to the head of the Hamas. If it will not be quiet in Tel Aviv, it will not be quiet in Gaza, and we will come after the leadership of Hamas.
The rockets, one landed in the open field and one hit the sea. Is that correct?
Thanks God, we have the Iron Dome, which we developed with the U.S., and we were able to intercept and to block those missiles. But the fact that you have terrorist organizations sending missiles, and they're committing a double war crime, because they're sending the missile from a civilian population in Gaza, they're using the residents as human shield, and they target a city in Israel.
Understood. There is some reporting suggesting that the Iron Dome did not hit either of those rockets incoming. Are you saying that
we are looking,
it indeed did?
We are looking at that, but with the Iron Dome, we feel safer. It allows us to continue and function, but it doesn't matter. The fact that they targeted Tel Aviv, that's what counts. Just imagine what would have happened if it would have hit a kindergarten, a school. We cannot allow it. That's why we acted, and we have the capabilities to defend our people.
Earlier on, Hamas and some of the smaller Palestinian groups were strongly denying responsibility for this attack. That was reported by the AP. The Israeli Defense Force put out this tweet on the rocket launches saying, quote, "We can confirm that the rockets fired from Gaza at Tel Aviv earlier tonight were launched by the Hamas terrorist organization."
Hamas is in charge about everything that happens in Gaza. And that was a real missile, a Fajr missile, and it can reach Tel Aviv and even longer distances. Hamas is in charge, and we take them responsible for that. And we have to understand what happened in Gaza. They had demonstration yesterday and today against the corruption of Hamas, about stealing money from the people of Gaza and using it for digging tunnels and sending rockets. I think maybe they want to distract the attention of the people in Gaza from the corruption of Hamas. That's why they send those rockets.
How many people were involved in that protest?
Thousands.
Wow.
Thousands, and as we speak,
could be significant too.
As we speak today, they continue with the demonstrations against Hamas, and we don't report it enough. But today they are trying to block people from going out to the streets and demonstrate against Hamas.
Interesting. I don't want to diminish this, okay? But there was a report suggesting this may have been fired accidentally. Have you heard about that, and what could you add on that?
It's not the first time that we hear that, but we cannot accept that when you have a terror organization sending two missiles, so it's not something happening with electricity. Two missiles and you target a city, it's not an accident.
Wow, you just hear the sounds of that, and you just wonder where or how this escalates.
My mother called me yesterday, and she's an older woman. She told me, Danny, I was sitting and watching TV, and all of a sudden I heard the siren, and I had to think what I'm doing. And thousands of Israelis had to run to find shelter, and that is terrorism. When you cannot sit at your house and watch TV, and you are afraid for what will happen, we will not allow it. We will not allow Hamas put our people in threat.
We saw a report from our correspondent Trey Yingst along the Gaza-Israeli border last hour. There was at least one Israeli tank perched on the hill. Is the Israeli government ready to take more action tonight?
We don't want to see more escalation. That is our message. But we are ready. We are ready to protect our people, and if we will need to, we will continue to attack Hamas targets.
Danny Zanon, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you,
nice to see you.
Thank you very much.
City. We'll see where it goes, and hopefully it stays safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. In a moment here, back to Washington, the Green New Deal proposal heading for a vote in the Senate. So how's this going to go down? Could it play a role in the campaign for 2020? We will take you there and find out. Also, this.
We are monitoring the situation in New Zealand after a coordinated terror attack that killed 49 and wounded dozens more. How America and the world are responding. Senator John Barrasso will join us with his thoughts next.
We heard, the firing, and it was from the main entrance of the building. And then everybody just ran to the back doors just to save themselves.
There are parents.
All right, this just coming into our newsroom now. Robert Mueller saying that former Trump campaign official Rick Gates is still cooperating with the investigation. A joint status report just issued from both teams states notably that the status of this matter has not changed substantially since the January report, as defendant Gates continues to cooperate with respect to several ongoing investigations, and accordingly the parties do not believe it is appropriate to commence the sentencing process at this time. In that joint statement, both teams are asking for a 60-day extension. We'll bring you more on this as we get it.
Those values, I can assure you, will not and cannot be shaken by this attack. The strongest possible condemnation of the ideology of the people who did this. You may have chosen us, but we utterly reject and condemn you.
Really strong statement there. That's the Prime Minister of New Zealand speaking out in Wellington against the hateful ideas that hit her country's worst ever terror attack in the city of Christchurch. 49 are dead, 2 killed at 2 different mosques during Friday prayers. From the White House, there was this statement. The United States strongly condemns the attack in Christchurch. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. We stand in solidarity with the people of New Zealand and their government against this vicious act of hate, end quote. We're looking for answers on this one. Bring in our headliner, Senator John Barrasso, chairman of the Republican Conference, sits on the Foreign Relations Committee. And Senator, thank you for coming back today. We got a number of topics to get through. The news from New Zealand is very tough to digest. Middle of the night there overseas, 49 dead. We're told at least 3 have been arrested. At one point, it was described as 3 men and maybe a woman may have been arrested as well. We'll see where that goes on the police side of this. But Your first reaction to this when you woke up this morning?
Well, I agree with the Prime Minister, and I agree with the statement out from the White House. This is horrific to me. This is terrorism. But whether it's in New Zealand at the mosque, whether it was in the synagogue in Pittsburgh, the South Carolina church, the Texas church, it is particularly disturbing when it happens to people who are at worship.
It's a horrible story, and it's something that we continue to learn more about as the morning goes on. Who was involved, just how premeditated that attack was. I want to get in the words of the president this morning, reacting to that attack, saying, quote, "My warmest sympathy and best wishes goes out to the people of New Zealand after the horrible massacre in the mosque. 49 innocent people have so senselessly died, with so many more seriously injured. The U.S. stands by New Zealand for anything we can do. God bless all." Senator, final thoughts on this. What should our message be to New Zealand in the wake of this horrible attack there?
Well, certainly we stand by them. We continue to condemn terror and terrorism. The world continues to be a dangerous place, and we will continue in this war against terror and terrorism around the world.
Well, it's sick to think that he wanted to get a message out there, and he did it on social media, and he did it with the killing and the fact that he stayed alive and may stand trial in New Zealand sometime soon. Sir, another topic, the vote went on national emergency. It went down yesterday. I want to get to that. Chuck Schumer reacting to the rebuke here.
So it's not an easy vote. I take my hats off to those members on the other side of the aisle who have let principle rise above party, who understand what the Constitution requires this afternoon and have agreed to vote against this emergency.
So we expect a veto from the president. You voted with the White House, sir. Why is that important?
I stand with the president. There is a national emergency at the border. I was with the president Wednesday afternoon in the White House. He felt that if the vote was going to go this way, he is prepared to veto. I encourage him to do so, and his veto will be sustained. There are not the votes to override the president. Listen to Chuck Schumer there. I mean, he is a border security denier. He's denying that there's an issue at the border, that we need more security, and he's denying the money that we need as a nation to secure our borders. Today, 130 Americans will die in this country as a result of opioid addiction and overdose. That, to me, is brought here by the Mexican cartels, and they are using our borders as a way to do it.
This wasn't just obviously Democrats who voted against the president's emergency declaration, members of your own party, Senator Brasso. What does it say about the Republicans who did not vote in line with the White House on this?
Well, every one of those Republicans is committed, and we are all united on securing the border. They want the money to be there to do it. We need a secure border in terms of a barrier, in terms of the funding for manpower, in terms of the technology as well. They wanted to do it a different way through the appropriations process. I would have preferred to do it that way. But ever since Donald Trump was elected president, what we have seen are Democrats obstructing him every step along the way that they can do it, even to the expense of our own nation's security. And to me, border security is national security.
We're waiting for the White House for word as to when that veto will happen, and we'll bring that to our viewers when it takes place. In the meantime, you got to vote on the Green New Deal. It's not binding, but it's going to happen apparently because Mitch McConnell wants it to. Here is Ocasio-Cortez, one of the leading proponents of this idea, just yesterday with our Fox team on the Hill.
I look forward to us having a real vote and not just a procedural vote. I mean, there's so much work to do in transitioning to 100% renewable energy, and we have to do that work with union labor. We have to do that work with by reinvigorating our entire workforce.
So you know what the debate is, sir. How's this vote going to go, and what will it tell us?
Well, it'll tell us a lot about the Democratic Party as they stand up for this, that they have promoted, and that so many of the Democrat candidates for president have supported, endorsed, and co-sponsored. Look, this so-called Green New Deal, it is unworkable, it's unaffordable, it will bankrupt families. The cost is about $65,000 per family per year. She just talked about union jobs. Well, the AFL-CIO, which represents 12.5 million union workers, has slammed this Green New Deal as being unaffordable, hurting workers, hurting our economy, and it doesn't work. What is happening is, in terms of global emissions, the United States only makes 13% of those. 33% come from China and India. We should not tie our hands behind our backs, lose our own competitive advantage in ways against other countries and put us at an own disadvantage on the idea of this pipe dream that is going to hurt our economy, hurt our workers. It's truly a road to socialism. And it's not just energy that they're trying to control, it's health care and it's our lives.
But still, we've seen a lot of support for it, a lot of enthusiasm around it. And some of those Democrats that are vying for their party's nomination for the presidency are backing the Green New Deal. What does all of this mean for 2020, Senator?
Well, for 2020, it shows, Sandra, that the Democrats are taking a sharp, hard left turn. Liberalism, to me, they're careening over the liberal cliff. They have taken so many hardline positions which go way so outside the American mainstream that it's scary. And it's the so-called Medicare for all, which eliminates private insurance in this country. It's the so-called Green New Deal, which forces expenses of $65,000 on every family in America every year. You've seen their position on abortion recently, which essentially allows murder after birth has occurred, item after item. The Democrats have gone far to the left, and I think that's going to be what we're going to see in 2020, because we started by talking about the border. We have presidential candidates on the Democrat side who want to eliminate immigration customs enforcement. They want to eliminate some of the barriers that are already there. We need barriers at the border. The president has been strong on that. They want to take them down. They apparently like sanctuary cities. We have drug cartels moving those drugs into the United States. It's a real problem.
It's the shaping up of a campaign, and we'll see which side it comes down on. When is the vote? When will that happen, the procedural vote in the Senate?
It'll happen about a week and a half from now.
Okay.
We'll have plenty of time to debate it, discuss it, and then defeat it.
All right, Senator John Barrasso, we'll see what happens then. Thank you for your time, the Republican from Wyoming. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you, Senator.
We're now seeing insight through Lisa Page's testimony, through Peter Strzok's discussion of this, that it was the Department of Justice basically saying there's no way Hillary Clinton is going to be charged here because we're not going to use the standard of intent. FBI just completely went against protocol when they would interview her with fact witnesses in the room and not give her any other thing.
Newly released transcripts of closed-door testimony by former FBI agent Peter Strzok revealing the Obama Justice Department negotiated an agreement with Hillary Clinton's lawyers, giving the FBI limited access to Clinton Foundation emails. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is live following all of this for us from London. Catherine, good morning.
Thank you, Sandra. Good morning. According to the newly public transcript, Strzok was pressed by the FBI about access to Hillary Clinton's personal servers. They were at the heart of the Bureau's case into whether she mishandled classified information as Secretary of State. And Strzok told House investigators, quote, we did not have access. My recollection is that the access to those emails were based on consent that was negotiated between the Department of Justice attorneys and counsel for Clinton. Strzok was also pressed on his dismissal from the special counsel Russia probe over his anti-Trump texts. Strzok told lawmakers Robert Mueller never questioned him about political bias. Republican John Ratcliffe led the line of questioning. Quote, did you have any discussion with special counsel Mueller or the other attorney about whether or not those text messages reflected bias or prejudice against Donald Trump? And Strzok replied, no. In a statement, Strzok's attorney told reporters that his client has always called for the transcript's release and that the former senior FBI agent is pleased that his side of the story is now public. Sandra.
Right, and Catherine, you also have some news on the Steele dossier as a Florida court has unsealed records in a defamation suit against BuzzFeed.
That's right. Well, according to the newly released deposition, Sandra, an aide to Senator John McCain gave the unverified dossier to BuzzFeed, as well as about a dozen reporters here in Washington during the presidential transition. For nearly 2 years, David Kramer, who was at one time at the State Department, refused interviews with Fox News and our questions over his handling of the dossier, which came to his attention during a Canadian security conference. The dossier was funded by Fusion GPS, whose co-founder is Glenn Simpson. Kramer told the court that he believed he was singled out by its author, former British spy Christopher Steele, to lend credibility to the Democratic-funded opposition research. Quote, I think they felt a senior Republican was better to be the recipient of this rather than a Democrat, because if it were a Democrat, I think that the view was that it would have been dismissed as a political attack. The former head of the FBI's counterintelligence division, Bill Priestap, also gave this declaration to the court that confirms the FBI got the first 33 pages of the dossier from Senator John McCain in December of 2016. This declaration also confirms that President Obama was briefed on the contents of the dossier in January of 2017, about a week and a half before the inauguration, Sandra.
Wow. Okay, Catherine Harris.
That's a wow.
Take in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Is North Korea ready to test fire yet again? Reports that Pyongyang is considering suspending nuclear talks with Washington. Mike Pompeo was asked about this today, and we'll ask Mercedes Schlapp from the White House for reaction on all that coming up.
Look forward to talking to her. Plus this, the problems piling up for Facebook, from technical difficulties to a criminal investigation. And
It's been a tough week for Facebook. The stock is down about $4 so far today. The company losing 2 top executives as prosecutors launch a criminal investigation into its data deals, and add to that a widespread outage of access. That's a tough week. Fox Business Network's David Asman is here to line it up. How you doing, David?
I'm good.
Well, it's a tough week for a lot of users, right? I mean,
well,
people went into shock when Facebook was down.
It was, but and just a slight correction, Bill. It's down 4% right now. It's really taking it on the chin. So it's more than $8. But the point is that they have become the target of choice for prosecutors all around the world. All of this bad press they've been getting for releasing private data is beginning to back up in terms of prosecutions. They became the target of the East District of New York, and this is the most serious one this week because this is a criminal investigation. It deals with other companies that they gave data to in apparently and possibly and allegedly, I have to put all those provisos in there because nothing's been proven, without the consent of the users. That is, your information going to other people from which they get money. This is a criminal prosecution. Other prosecutions have been a little different in terms of criminality. They've been more corporate. These are targeted at particular individuals. Northern California also has a prosecution going on about Cambridge Analytica. Remember that thing where they claimed, gee, we didn't know what Cambridge Analytica was doing. Well, this is trying to figure out whether they knew more than they're willing to tell. And then overseas there are these prosecutions. And then the company itself had 2 defections. 2 people quit. Very important people. One of the guys was the head of product development at Facebook. Very important guy. The other guy was the head of WhatsApp, which is one of the most. Been there. Both of them were very integral to the workings of it. And then they had a big server outage. They also had this Liz Warren ad that they took. It's been a terrible week. But, you know, other companies that have been pioneers like this company, for example, Microsoft, went through a period where they were scrutinized with the same kind of intent that Facebook is now getting scrutinized, and they've come out of it. They're doing quite well. So this is a bad period because they are the company that the world loves to hate right now.
Technology companies go through bad periods. They can come out of it or they don't. And New York Times took this on in their piece this morning. Facebook's biblically bad week, added criminal investigation to the list of technical difficulties and PR disasters. What's the thinking on Wall Street, by the way, about Facebook?
I think despite today's downward trend, it has come back from where it tanked a couple of months ago. It was down to about 138. Now it's back up to about 170. So it's come back. I think Wall Street thinks in the long run Facebook is going to make it because they're so involved in everybody's life that you just can't avoid them.
Over the entire globe.
That's right.
Thank you,
That's right. Everywhere.
Absolutely. Good to see you. There he is, David.
Thank you. Thank you.
See at 4, by the way. He's not done. All right, we've got this Fox News alert for you, and brand new charges filed in connection with that alleged terror compound in New Mexico. A live report on that. New federal charges in connection with that alleged terror compound in New Mexico. All 5 suspects now accused of plotting to attack the FBI and military personnel. Alicia Acuna has this story for us. Alicia.
Hi, Sandra. These men and women were originally charged in September with illegal possession of firearms and ammunition by persons illegally in this country. This new superseding indictment is much more serious, alleging a conspiracy to stage violent and deadly attacks in the United States. The federal government accuses the ringleader of telling the group to, quote, be prepared to engage in jihad, to die as martyrs, and to engage in violent acts, including killing Federal Bureau of Investigation's employees, government officials, officials and military personnel. You'll remember the 5 suspects: Janie Lavelle, Siraj Ibn Wahaj, Haraj Wahaj, Subhana Wahaj, and Lucas Morton. They were arrested last August in a raid by authorities as part of an investigation into the disappearance of this young boy, 3-year-old Abdul Ghani Wahaj, who the adults are charged with kidnapping from his mother in Georgia. His father is one of the suspects who authorities say allowed him to die in some sort of religious ritual. His body was found on the group's compound in Amalia, New Mexico. It was then authorities discovered 11 children who were malnourished, living in squalid conditions. Federal agents say they also found a firing range, evidence of tactical training, and stored firearms and ammunition. The superseding indictment claims they, quote, maintained a training compound to prepare for attacks on government, military, and other institutions. Now, attorneys for two of the suspects sent Fox News a statement saying all of our clients will be pleading not guilty at the arraignment next week. Sandra, no specific terrorist group has been named in the indictment, but we will learn more as things proceed in the court. Sandra.
Alicia Acuna, thank you.
There is new information from overseas. Deadliest terror attack in New Zealand's history. 49 are dead. 2 different attacks coordinated on 2 different mosques about 3 miles apart in the city of Christchurch, New Zealand. We'll get a live report in a moment as our coverage continues on that and more.
When police come, they ask us to come outside and come this way. But we stay there for 10-15 minutes. We saw many injured, bullets in arms and bombs and, everywhere.